The long-awaited new millennium was finally upon us, and although it was a time of great celebration, the night was also met with apprehension.
Now, as the next century rapidly approaches, there have been very legitimate concerns about potential Y2K problems and terrorist threats. And John Walsh of America's Most Wanted is in the command center of the New York City Mayor's office.
More than 50 state, federal agencies are watching and ready to react to any situation. Starting last Wednesday, more than 100 crisis managers began round-the-clock monitoring of New York's critical systems. And we're on the 23rd floor here, so this place is virtually flood-proof and chemical warfare-proof.
As the world turned before us, it became clear that Y2K had been overblown.
It is too early yet to say that all is well, but so far, the FAA says that not a plane was affected. The word came to Washington that all is well. So far, all of the briefings in Washington have told us that everything is green, which means that all computer systems are so far working in manner. The Pentagon is pleased, and it looks like this Y2K turn may turn out to have none of the trouble that anyone predicted.
Tonight we celebrate the change of centuries, the dawning of a new millennium. We celebrate the future, imagining an even more remarkable 21st century. So we Americans must not fear change. Instead, let us welcome it, embrace it, and create it. Such a triumph will require great efforts from us all. It will require us to stand against the forces of hatred and bigotry, terror and destruction. It will require us to make further breakthroughs in science and technology, to cure dread diseases, heal broken bodies, lengthen life, and unlock secrets from global warming to the black holes in the universe.
Although Y2K turned out fine, there was a definite sense of disappointment. The coming of the new millennium seemed anticlimactic. There was no discernible difference between the years 1999 and 2000. As the year passed, this feeling only grew stronger, with a presidential election featuring two of the most boring candidates Americans could remember. There was some excitement, as an extremely close election ended in controversy over who had won. But after the dust had settled, the title of Commander-in-Chief went to this guy. Then it was back to business as usual, with George W. Bush as the most boring president in history.
I'm working on some initiatives. You'll see. I mean, there'll be some decisions that I will have made while I'm here, and we'll be announcing them as time goes on.
1 year later, something happened that would change the world forever. That morning we watched in horror and disbelief as reality resembled the fiction of a big-budget Hollywood disaster film. The nation was in shock. How did this happen? Who flew those planes? What are we going to do? These were the obvious questions which demanded answers. And we didn't have to wait very long for those answers. 19 Muslim extremists had hijacked airliners with box cutters. They targeted major U.S. landmarks to get their message across. We hate America and its freedom. These men had been led by Osama bin Laden, the mastermind behind the anti-American radical Islamic group known as Al-Qaeda. Luckily, American troops had already been amassed in and around Afghanistan, the country where bin Laden was hiding in a cave. As the military went to work in Afghanistan, we the people were asked to make some serious changes at home. The war on terror had begun, and with it came the expectation that certain liberties would have to be sacrificed in the name of security. We found ourselves living in a post-9/11 world. As the world changed all around us, a fanatical form of patriotism offered condolence to those mourning the loss of the now distant good old days. Boredom was a thing of the past. Changes came faster than they ever had before. While most people were slapping red, white, and blue stickers on their bumpers, the United States government was busy holding a conference concerned with changes so large that they promise to alter human nature itself. 21st century goals were discussed in preparation for what would come to be known as the Age of Transitions. The title, Age of Transitions, was coined by Newt Gingrich in his introduction to the National Science Foundation and Department of Commerce sponsored workshop on NBIC technologies. The workshop featured a wide range of participants from governmental and private institutions such as NASA, MIT, Carnegie Mellon University, the Department of Defense, Hewlett-Packard, and many more. It was a chance for experts in the fields of nano, biological, information, and cognitive technologies to discuss their visions for the future alongside government officials. And the goals discussed for the future were nothing short of Promethean, with the key goal stated as enhancing human performance. This in turn would lead to a more efficient societal structure. Indeed, technological convergence was given as the answer to all of the world's now infamous global problems. It promised to bring upon a new renaissance of human development. It was the hope of integrating humanity with nature to save the Earth. Visions laid out included robotics, cybernetics, artificial intelligence, life extension, brain enhancement, virtual reality, genetic engineering, and even teleportation. Enhancing human performance would require merging human biology with technology. Brain-machine interfaces, or BMIs, would allow the control of machinery with the brain itself. Implantable brain chips would also be able to store information and enhance cognitive function. The ultimate human-machine symbiosis could be to download an actual copy of a person's brain into a supercomputer. This would allow someone to effectively live forever within a computer-generated virtual simulation. More subtle concepts such as using virtual reality in classrooms were also discussed. And of course, the military implications of convergence were quite obvious, as cybernetic enhancement of human performance is inevitable. Achieving these visions requires the decoding and understanding of complex systems, the most important complex system being the human brain. After all, it is the driving force behind human performance. Through the use of bioinformatics, functions of the brain could be understood. Bioinformatics is the process of collecting data from a biological system in order to understand how that system works. The next step in the process would involve biomimetics, the mimicking of those same biological systems. Using this process could enable the development of artificial intelligence. A stated military goal for artificial intelligence is the creation of uninhabited combat vehicles. Removing the pilot would result in a more combat-agile aircraft. These machines would also have the ability to maintain themselves. The use of new materials created with nanotech would enable lighter, stronger, high-tech solutions. And of course, the super soldier was also mentioned at this conference. All sorts of new techniques, from pharmaceuticals to robotic exoskeletons, can make this vision come true. It's important to realize that this report clearly states that cybernetic enhancement of human performance is inevitable, with Newt Gingrich proclaiming, "Those countries that ignore these patterns of change will fall further behind and find themselves weaker, poorer, and more vulnerable to their wiser, more change-oriented neighbors." Mr. Gingrich conservatively calls for a tripling of the National Science Foundation budget. He also mentions George Bush's approval of a $604 million increase towards the nano budget. Convergence is the priority area of importance in implementing the great promise of a new day for the 21st century. One group stands above all others in applauding this funding for convergence. They are known as transhumanists, most prominent among which are professors, philosophers, scientists, and celebrities. The transhumanists see a world of problems, just begging to be solved with converging technology.
Sometimes we don't see a problem because either it's too familiar or it's too big. Can't see it because it's too big. The first is death is a big problem. If you look at the statistics, the odds are not very favorable to us. So far, most people who have lived have also died. Existential risk, the second big problem. Existential risk is a threat to human survival or to the long-term potential of our species. The third big problem is that life isn't usually as wonderful as it could be. I think that's a big, big problem. There are just those moments that you have experienced where life was fantastic, and you wonder, why can't it be like that all the time? Suppose we fixed these things.
The transhumanist golden age will kick off with an event known as the singularity. The singularity will occur at the point which artificial intelligence surpasses the capabilities of the human brain.
Hello, I am Kibo. In the near future, you and I are going to be very good friends.
Is this really the best if we can dream of? Is this the best we can do? Or is it possible to find something a little bit more inspiring? If we want to achieve this, what in the world would have to change? And this is the answer. We would have to change, not just the world around us, but we ourselves. Not just the way we think about the world, but the way we are. Our very biology, human nature would have to change. So we could think of adding on different new sensory capacities and mental faculties.
Brain implants have the potential to treat a wide range of conditions in the very near future.
Is that we are the information, the processing going on in our minds, which means that an uploaded mind would actually be the same person. A computer copy of me would be me.
In the same way that we have 100-year-old cars now that are working just as well as they did when they rolled off the production line, insofar as there were production lines back then. Similarly, once we become able to implement sufficiently comprehensive repair and maintenance technologies, we'll be able to do the same to the human body.
There will be cyborgs. I see that as inevitable. But I don't think it's going to solve the problem. In fact, I think it'll just make it worse. Because, I mean, imagine you're a Terran and your next door neighbor starts going cyborgian, right? Starts adding components, and then suddenly the person next door is capable of learning a human language in just by, in seconds. So you would then get a real split in human capacities, because these cyborgs are no longer human in effect.
You get a lot of people who do want to upgrade themselves, no question about that, and there'll be commercial interests and political interests supporting those groups. There's a lot of money to be made here, a lot of power, not just in a military sense, but in an everyday sense, in terms of who gets jobs and who doesn't.
From cyborgs with very long lifespans to downloading consciousness itself into a machine, transhumanists say that it is impossible to predict exactly what a post-human will be, but it will indeed be better than human. Such lofty promises are understandably being embraced by many people in search of a better world for everyone. So-called techno-progressives wish to see this technology developed, but also want to make sure that it is equitably distributed throughout all strata of society. Techno-progressives are rivaled by various people, including bioconservatives, those people opposed to the creation of posthumans, and surprisingly, also by experts within the fields of convergence itself. Marvin Minsky, the originator of artificial neural networks and the co-founder of the Artificial Intelligence Lab at MIT, has said, "Ordinary citizens wouldn't know what to do with eternal life. The masses don't have any clear-cut goals or purpose." No matter how you look at it, the singularity is being promised as the great solution to our 21st century global problems. Thanks to such early work as the Human Genome Project, we will be able to decode DNA itself. Through the use of applied genetics, science will be able to improve the human race. What most people don't realize is that this concept is not new. It is, in fact, a repackaging of what was once called eugenics. The term eugenics means good genes, or good origin. It was coined in 1883 by British scientist Sir Francis Galton. He defined eugenics as a moral philosophy to improve humanity by encouraging the best and brightest to breed. Galton was the half-cousin of Sir Charles Darwin, the famous originator of the theory of evolution, which also would come to be known as Darwinism. The three main tenets of Darwinism are the evolutionary transformation from one species into others, natural selection is the cause of divergence in species, the drive behind evolution is the sexual reproductive instinct, and that life is a constant struggle for survival. Galton actually used the theory of evolution to substantiate his new science of eugenics. In his book, Studies on Hereditary Genius, he attempted to prove that the aristocratic families of the British Empire were in fact a superior race. The fact that in the struggle for life, they had made it to the very top of society proved that they were the best that humanity had to offer. It is important to note that Darwin's famous Origin of Species is actually subtitled Preservation of Favored Races in the Struggle for Life. Not surprisingly, the Royal Society, a scientific institution dedicated to the improvement of natural knowledge, picked up on these new ideas and promoted Darwin heavily. Being a creation of the British monarchy, the Royal Society was obviously in favor of promoting the idea of the genetic superiority of the royal family. Science itself was being positioned to replace the old religious appeal of the divine right of kings to rule over the inferior masses. Darwin himself stated, "Elite status is prima facie evidence of evolutionary superiority." Through scientism, science as religion, Darwinism could in fact bring about social change. Social Darwinism would manifest itself as eugenics. To eugenicists, the masses were cattle, with Galton calling eugenics the science of improving the stock. The rise of scientism spawned the widespread proliferation of eugenics, as it reached American shores at the turn of the century. The Eugenics Record Office in Cold Springs Harbor, New York, went to work, amassing hundreds of thousands of family pedigrees for genetic research. They also lobbied for state sterilization acts and other eugenic legislation. In 1899, Henry Clay Sharp, a prison physician, began sterilizing degenerate prisoners. And later in 1907, he was a key advocate for a law in Indiana which was passed, mandating the compulsory sterilization of degenerates throughout the state. In 1921, the American Eugenics Society was formed and began propaganda campaigns, which included the promotion of eugenics in churches, schools, and state fair exhibitions. Funding for American eugenics came from the Carnegie, Harriman, and Rockefeller families, among others. Eugenics was being accepted as a genuine form of science. Social Darwinism made strong advances toward a world in which scientism would fulfill Galton's dream of having eugenics be the religion of the future. But a major setback occurred at the end of World War II. It was discovered that American eugenics had been a major influence on Hitler's final solution. In 1934, Rudolf Hess had stated that National Socialism is nothing but applied biology. Hitler had only wanted to preserve the best German stocks and elevate them to a dominant position within society. It was at this point in eugenics history that a crucial move had to be made in order to hide eugenics from the now aware masses of humanity. Prominent eugenicist Julian Huxley stepped up and offered a solution. He simply invented a new word to replace eugenics, that term being transhumanism, which he defined as a need for mankind to realize the importance of steering the direction of its own evolution. Yes, eugenics was one of the original aspects of transhumanism, and it is no surprise as Julian was the grandson of Thomas Henry Huxley, who had been a president of the Royal Society and one of the most well-known advocates of Darwinism in its early days. Julian, being properly raised, was educated at Oxford, his specialty being evolutionary biology. He went on to many high-level positions, which included the titles of Vice President and President of the British Eugenics Society, which of course had the task of removing undesirable variants from the human gene pool. Julian Huxley has said the following of eugenics: "The lowest strata are reproducing too fast. Therefore, they must not have too easy access to relief or hospital treatment, lest the removal of the last check on natural selection should make it too easy for children to be produced or to survive. Long unemployment should be a ground for sterilization." Transhumanism was born out of humanism, which is yet another form of scientism, characterized by its faith in the power of human beings to create their own future. Yet another clever rationalization for eugenics as the creative force behind man-made evolution. No one doubts the wisdom of managing the germplasm of agricultural stocks, so why not apply the same concept to human stocks? Among Huxley's many distinguished positions, one which stands out was that of being the first ever Director General of UNESCO, the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. The job of the organization being to bring culture to the Third World. Culture being the worldwide spread of eugenic philosophy. It will be important for UNESCO to see that the eugenic problem is examined with the greatest care, and that the public mind is informed of the issues at stake, so that much that now is unthinkable may at least become thinkable. Darwinism is a religion to the global power elite, who do believe themselves superior to the masses of humanity. Humanism and transhumanism were clever disguises, created specifically so that global eugenics operations could be carried out without being noticed. Insiders referred to their continued work as crypto-eugenics, as they were carried out covertly. Prominent among this crowd was the grandson of Charles Darwin, Charles Galton Darwin, a distinguished fellow of the Royal Society and president of the British Eugenics Society. In 1952, his book The Next Million Years was published. In it, he describes 5 great revolutions throughout human history, the 5th of which had not yet happened. But when it did, it would kickstart the next million years of human evolution. This fifth revolution would involve using science to alter human nature itself, possibly creating a race of supermen. This, of course, is the familiar transhumanist ideal of the post-human. If man is really a tame animal, there is no reason why breeds of man should not be created. Although, Galton Darwin was skeptical of this point, because he believed that man is untamable. He goes on to illustrate this point with a hypothetical story of an island in which a visionary director gathers a variety of highly skilled people and institutes a social Darwinistic breeding program. Members of the island breed with each other based on their unique talents, intelligence, or beauty. For instance, 2 athletic people would give birth to a new generation of superior athletes. The population would become tame, but the island's director would not. Though it might conceivably be possible to tame the majority of mankind, this could only be done by leaving untamed a minority of the population. Moreover, this minority would have to be the group possessing the most superior qualities of all. The message is clear. Darwin is legitimizing the elite ruling class, which he himself is a part of. The third tenet of Darwinism, that sexual instinct causes conflict, is also addressed in this book. Galton Darwin offers up a scientific solution. With the knowledge of the various sexual hormones, it might also become possible to free the majority of mankind from the urgency of sexual impulse, so that they could live contented, celibate lives. He goes on and on about how the struggle for survival will cause global conflict, and that eugenics operations will be a necessity to control population growth. He applauds China for its long history of civil services, which predate those of Europe by millennia. China is described as the model type of civilization for a world which will ultimately be unified through technology. Galton Darwin has a fascination with insects, stating that humans should resemble workers in an anthill. He goes on to say, "There might be a drug which, without other harmful effects, removed the urgency of sexual desire, and so reproduced in humanity the status of workers in a beehive." It is this human beehive which has been the ideal society in the eyes of elites for a very long time. This will be the template for post-humanity, the ultimate slave race, scientifically designed to never rebel. The transhumanists have a popular term, hive mind, which refers to the giant collective intelligence which will be created when people the world over link their brains together with technology. Their general belief is that this new experience will be wonderful, creating a whole new superintelligence through symbiotic existence. In reality, the hive mind will be Galton Darwin's beehive, the creation of the new man, which has been written about for many years.
I'm totally convinced that the human race is being mutated according to a scientific method. We know that there has been experiments done as far back as the 1920s and 30s of trying to crossbreed animals with humans. The Germans were doing that.
All the main eugenicists, Margaret Sanger, H.G. Wells, the Princes, Prince Bernhard,
right.
said
Yep.
they're going to make 2 different species, and then BBC, while I was making the film, showed this little goblin creature that we're going to be, and then they're going to be these beautiful blonde-haired, blue-eyed people, and they hate us so much, they want to make themselves better than us, So they actively want to kill most of us and then have a clown goblin creature that they call the old humans that they laugh at.
That's exactly right.
We know the GMO food's changing our genetics. We know we're genetically getting dumber, not just chemically. Go ahead. This is massive, folks.
That's right. That's what I've been looking at for 48 years. The complete transformation and transmutation of the human spirit into a whole new kind of creature.
Transhumanism fills people's minds with hopes and dreams of becoming superhuman. But the fact of the matter is that the true goal is the removal of that pesky human sexual urge, and ultimately, of free will itself. Post-humanity will be a new human which has been genetically engineered and brain-chipped for total control. Part man and part machine, the new man will no longer be in need of his sexual reproductive function. I understand that this is not what the average transhumanist wants to hear, but we must realize that such a bizarre and horrific future is not only possible, it is intended. Although we won't arrive at this point overnight. First, we must step into the world of virtual reality, where our identity as purely human will blend with that of our new virtual persona.
In virtual reality, you can be someone else. You don't have to be the same boring person all the time. I mean, you all have these personalities inside you that don't quite fit with your bodies in real reality. So basically, most people just, kill them all off. Some people don't actually keep any of their personalities, which reminds me of some of my old boyfriends, but that's another story.
And you read the Genesis, you read the government plans, they are now doing it, inserting us into a matrix. You're being sucked into your iPhone, sucked into your video games, you're already interfacing.
If a machine is passing down signals that keep you completely happy, then why not be part of the Matrix? I really do think Neo in the Matrix trying to destroy things, he's a bit of a party pooper. Life for humans in a Matrix could be really cool.
To give skeptics the benefit of the doubt, perhaps this version of post-humanity is pure speculation. However, converging technology does present the need for radical change within society, no matter how it is applied. This point is made over and over again in the National Science Foundation 2001 report. The age of transitions refers to the fact that global society will be in flux during a time of massive changes. Making this point clear, the report goes on to explain the need for socio-tech, which is the predictive science of societal behavior. The multiple drivers of human behavior have long been known. Now, through the decoding of complex systems, a completely predictable and managed society can be realized. To use the tremendous computing power we now have to integrate data across these fields, to create new models and hence new understanding of the behavior of individuals. The ultimate goal is acquiring the ability to predict the behavior of an individual and, by extension, of groups. Using tools and approaches provided by science and technology will raise our ability to predict behaviors. It will allow us to interdict undesirable behaviors before they cause significant harm to others, and to support and encourage behaviors leading to greater social goods. The enforcement of pre-crime, as in the film Minority Report, is their stated goal. The planning of this Orwellian system has even spawned a whole new science, memetics, which is the study of memes. A meme is any idea which passes from one person to others, eventually becoming a norm throughout society. Memetics would allow a deeper understanding of the collective cognitive processes throughout society. The applications are, of course, oriented toward social Darwinism.
Memetics is founded on the principle of universal Darwinism. Darwin had this amazing idea. Indeed, some people say it's the best idea anybody ever had, because the idea was so simple, and yet it explains all design in the universe. All design in the universe.
Certain ideas may have the force of a social virus. We can't let any social viruses bring down the species now, can we? Prior efforts to Darwinize culture have a long and ignoble history. What is new that might allow progress this time around? Not surprisingly, the report also gives a visionary solution to the war on terror. Sociotech can help us win the war on terrorism. It can help us to understand the motivations of the terrorists and so eliminate them. At this point, it's important to understand the legal definition of the term terrorist. Since 9/11, a mountain of legislation has been passed, including the Patriot Act, the Military Commissions Act, the John Warner Defense Act, and countless others, all of which have, through their legislative cunning, rendered the term terrorist so ambiguous that you can be deemed a terrorist for any reason at all. You can be taken to a secret prison without charges, without habeas corpus, and with no rights whatsoever. These laws were not written on a whim. They were specifically designed to give the government carte blanche authority over the people during the chaos and confusion of the age of transitions.
And so this transition is perhaps the most important transition of all time. Some people don't want it. They fear this transition because this transition is to a planetary civilization tolerant of many cultures. These are the terrorists. In their gut, they fear this because they know they are witnessing the birth pangs of the beginning of a new planetary civilization, and the terrorists want nothing to do with it.
It states that as global interdependence increases, every aspect of human life will change. Climate change, competition for resources, shortages of food and water, and the constant threat of pandemics will keep people in a worldwide state of shock. As the middle class in the West declines, extremist politics will be embraced by some out of desperation. Flash mobs will threaten military forces, which admittedly will be working alongside police. As America and Europe decline in power, China and India are expected to gain prominence on the global stage. The population of the West will decrease due to declining fertility. The report mentions this declining fertility on 3 separate occasions, but interestingly, never explains the cause of this problem. Amid all this crisis, technological breakthroughs will develop at an unprecedented rate. Human-computer interfaces will stimulate cultural change. By 2035, an implantable information chip could be developed and wired directly to the user's brain. Synthetic sensory perception being direct to the user's senses. It is likely that the majority of the global population will find it difficult to turn the outside world off. ICT is likely to be so pervasive that people are permanently connected to a network or two-way data stream with inherent challenges to civil liberties. Being disconnected could be considered suspicious. Disconnecting from the hive mind will get the military police at your door in no time. Presumably at this point, they will be super soldiers So if you're lucky, they'll drag you off to a forced labor camp as opposed to simply just bashing your brains in. What kind of class structure will exist in this nightmare world? A small, super rich elite and a substantial underclass of slum and subsistence dwellers. Where are those techno-progressives when you need them? A more permissive R&D environment could accelerate the decline of ethical constraints and restraints. The speed of technological and cultural change could overwhelm society's ability to absorb the ethical implications. The nearest approximation to an ethical framework could become a form of secular utilitarianism in an otherwise amoral scientific culture. The ultimate form of social Darwinism will be welcomed at long last. Galden's religion will reign supreme as the younger generations make eugenics a normal part of their life. Declining youth populations in Western societies could become increasingly dissatisfied with their economically burdensome baby boomer elders. This could lead to a civic renaissance with strict penalties for those failing to fulfill their social obligations. It might also open the way to policies which permit euthanasia as a means to reduce the burden of care for the elderly. Julian Huxley couldn't have said it better himself, but let's not forget Julian's brother, Aldous Huxley, author of Doors of Perception and A Brave New World. In 1962, he gave a lecture at the UC Berkeley, in which he clearly laid out the vision of this planned future society.
In the past, we can say that all revolutions have essentially aimed at changing the environment in order to change the individual. Today, we are faced, I think, with the approach of what may be called the ultimate revolution, the final revolution, where a man can act directly on the mind-body of his fellows. The nature of the ultimate revolution with which we are now faced is precisely this, that we are in process of developing a whole series of techniques which will enable the controlling oligarchy, who have always existed and presumably always will exist, to get people actually to love their servitude. This is seems to me the ultimate in malevolent revolution, shall we say. First of all, to standardize the population, to iron out inconvenient human differences, to create, so to say, mass-produced models of human beings arranged in some kind of a scientific caste system. A number of the predictions which were purely fantastic when I made them 30 years ago have come true or seem in process of coming true, not through terror, but through making life seem much more enjoyable than it normally does. Enjoyable to the point where, as I've said before, human beings come to love a state of things which by any reasonable and decent human standard they ought not to love. And this, I think, is perfectly possible. One of the more recent developments in the sphere of neurology, the implantation of electrodes in the brain. This, of course, has been done on a large scale. The behavior of rats with electrodes planted in different centers. The technique was that they had a bar which they pressed and which stimulated this pleasure center, which was evidently absolutely ecstatic, because these rats were pressing the bar 18,000 times a day. Apparently, if you kept them from pressing the bar for a day, they would press the bar 36,000 times on the following day and would fall till they fell down in complete exhaustion. And they would neither eat nor be interested in the opposite sex and would just go on pressing this bar. In the few cases in which this has been done with very sick human beings, the effects are evidently very remarkable. These people were suffering from the uncontrollable depression, and they'd had the electrodes inserted into something resembling evidently the pleasure center of the rat. When they felt too bad, they just pressed a button on the battery in their pocket, and he said the result was fantastic. The sort of things that might happen. I mean, what might happen if these fantastically powerful techniques were used by unscrupulous people in authority? What on earth would happen? What sort of society would we get?
Mind control is the most important issue facing humanity today. All other issues, causes, choices, and electives are contingent upon our free thought. We all formulate our thoughts and our actions based on what we know. And we need to know that that knowledge base has been altered. It's been deliberately suppressed for decades. I've come a long way from the kind of robotic mind control that I experienced. And even though my experience is extreme and pretty horrific in many regards, the fact remains that mind control is a sliding scale. And we all experience some form of mind control or another, whether it's information control that's absolutely controlling our perceptions, our abilities to respond, allowing for that superstition to creep in. And superstition so often renders us totally helpless to affect a situation.
The basic problem is that we are living in a virtual reality. We're living in a totally controlled environment, an environment that has been created by mass media. Now, many people, especially young people, accept unquestioningly the reality that is presented by the media. Popular culture, movies, television, music, carry messages about how society works and how people should behave. And so entertainment is not value-free. It has ideological content. It presents a worldview that influences the people who watch the programming. There is a reason why television networks and the music industry, the various companies, they have programming departments. The programming that we are constantly assaulted by throughout our life conditions us, it programs us to a particular worldview.
Take a look at some of the most popular television programs in our culture. American Idol, Survivor, game shows. All of these are designed to reinforce the social Darwinian concept of competition. In order to survive, you must outdo your competitors. This is a recurrent theme in our society. We have all been propagandized to have low self-esteem. The only way to feel good about yourself is to succeed. Success involves acquiring anything that is bigger and better. If you have to be disingenuous or downright conniving, that's okay, as long as you end up winning. We are expected to take this as a law of nature. After all, it's survival of the fittest. This is the way that species evolve. You don't want to hold humanity back now, do you? Think of the mass media that preys on our insecurities. Fitness magazines, fashion, obsession with celebrity, youth, wealth, and beauty. We are obsessed with youth and enhancement. And now, the ultimate form of enhancement is at our fingertips. Transhumanism offers the ultimate form of bettering yourself. You want to be young? How's eternal life sound? You want to be strong? Why not add some machine parts to your pathetic body? You want to be smart? Here, put this computer chip in your head and become omnipotent. If you think that transhumanism is being introduced into such a fiercely competitive world by chance, think again. We have all been trained like Pavlovian dogs with a non-stop barrage of propaganda. If we don't own up to this reality, then we will all be outdone by our superiors. those people who have always believed themselves to be the pinnacle of human greatness. This is a top-down system, created from the top to benefit a very few at the top. We are at the bottom, but if we all wake up and realize that this is not our system, then it can be changed.
If you read the books by Plato, he being an aristocrat of his day and studying in Egypt, he believed this himself, and he wrote about it in his books.
Plato?
Uh-huh, yeah.
Yeah, and so the inferior ones like us, we don't have souls.
Well, yeah, but souls. See, in ancient times, and this was even taught in the early Christian church, you had body, soul, and spirit. And if you had all three, that was completion. That was the ultimate trinity. But they claimed that the people at the bottom never achieved or acquired spirit, so they were just soul. The soul had no intellect of its own, and you just went back into the big sea of pea soup and got mushed up.
Ah, yeah. I see. Oh, that's pretty wild.
And that's what Plato attributed their superior intellect and knowledge. And for the very fact they were aristocratic and successful, that's what he attributed that to, was that they came from these lineages that had spirit. Yeah.
So they go on and evolve, but the rest of us go back into the primordial soup.
That's it, yeah.
That's pretty wild.
Isn't it, yeah?
All right, thanks, Alan.
Thanks for calling.
Life extension, singularity, and the promise of a golden age. Are we to believe in such a thing? Or are we being led down a primrose path, the proverbial road to hell? Post-human, a word not to be taken lightly, as it implies the end of the human race. Who has the authority to make such a decision? Only a god, or a power which believes itself to be a god, can take such action. I realize that many of you watching this have become hardened, jaded, and cynical in life. You may even believe that the human race doesn't deserve to live on, or at least that's what you think you believe. Now is the time to face that phantom in the mirror in order to find out what truly exists within the innermost core of your being. I sincerely hope you will understand that life is sacred, free will is a gift, and humanity is worth saving.
As the voltage increases, so their movements will occur involuntarily. So they can't resist this. If they do, I turn it up higher.
We got one soldier left. He's out of bullets. He's got 40 insurgents coming at him. What do we got, Troy? We got a bayonet. What are we good for? 2 or 3? Come on, you're the expert on bear spray. Give us something that can knock out 20, 30 people. This took some doing.
What do you think that robots are going to bring to our lives, our societies?
I think they'll be our best friends, our companions. I can't wait for Hugo to be a nanny and to help us in everything that we do.
The neurons from the rat's brain are put in the robot and linked up to electrodes. The brain makes decisions which are fed to the robot's motors.
I buy that the world is falling apart in every way. The main cause of it is overpopulation. Not the main. The cause of the world's destruction is there are too many people. No, I think there are too many stupid people.
A think tank in the UK says
too mmany kids are what's making the planet worse.
Tasers are an integral part of what we do, and we thought you ought to see them.
The man led away in handcuffs and hopefully taken one of those secret prisons in Eastern Europe, never to be heard from.
Oh, I get that happens.
We can only hope.
Lance, this sounds like some freaky science fiction book. Tell us what this is about. These two workers have microchips.
Right. Well, this is very, very real, and these microchips are about the size of a grain of rice. They get injected into your skin. They have a computer chip, a transceiver, and basically they can talk to an electromagnetic reading device, and this can allow you to open doors, access databases, and these devices, RFID is what this is called, is really starting to permeate our lives.
Brain reprogramming techniques, that sounds ominous.